Everyone wants to be wanted, unless the one wanting them is the FBI.
Leslie Rogie, an escaped federal prisoner who's just been added to the FBI's list of the 10 most wanted fugitives.
Welcome to WatchMojo.com, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 FBI's most notorious wanted fugitives. For this list, we're considering infamous criminals who are officially on the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives list, and not those criminals who may have been wanted by the FBI but were not included on their list.
For 18 years now, the FBI has been searching for the Unabomber. At one point, it issued a sketch of the main suspect in their search.
Number 10, Eric Rudolph. Years wanted, 5.
We bring you back live to the International Broadcast Center in Atlanta right now, and the mood of our program changes dramatically at this moment because, quite apparently, the kind of incident which you hope will never take place at an Olympic Games has in fact taken place.
One woman was killed and more than 100 people injured when a bomb exploded at the Olympic Park in Atlanta in 1996. This was the work of Eric Rudolph, who later bombed a lesbian bar and 2 abortion clinics, killing another innocent person.
His sentencing hearing was emotionally wrenching. Survivors of his clinic bombing finally got the opportunity to lash out at Rudolph.
Been waiting 7.5 years for it, and the main purpose was to see him and let him know he failed.
Associated with a white supremacist religious sect, Rudolph held strong anti-gay, anti-abortion, and anti-socialist beliefs, which influenced his actions. Rudolph pled guilty to his charges to avoid the death sentence.
Are you worried that Rudolph might fuel extremists, these domestic terrorists?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. But in actuality, Rudolph was fueled by other people.
Number 9, Leslie Isbin Rogie. Years wanted, 6.
One time or another, Rogie's had a whole pack of police agencies on his tail. Local cops, the U.S. Marshals, even international authorities. And now he's reached the pinnacle of his career. Leslie Rogie's on the FBI's 10 most wanted list.
It's thanks to technological advances that Leslie Isbin Rogie is on this list. A career bank robber, Rogie stole some $2 million from more than 24 banks.
Since he escaped from federal custody in 1985, Rogie has been charged with bank robberies in Arkansas and North Carolina. His travels, financed with stolen cashier's checks, have taken him from Belhaven, North Carolina, to Charleston, South Carolina, to Hendersonville, North Carolina, always just a step ahead of police.
But Rogie's claim to fame is that he's considered the first person on the FBI's most wanted list to be apprehended thanks to the internet. A person in Guatemala alerted the local police after seeing Rogie's photo on the FBI website. That one little picture earned Rogie 65 years in the slammer.
The creativeness about this arrest came about through the use of the internet, worldwide internet, as well as the showing of America's Most Wanted in Guatemala.
Number 8, Ruth Eisman Shire. Years wanted, less than 1. In 1968, the first woman was added to the FBI's most wanted list. Ruth Eisman Shire, along with her partner Gary Stephen Christ, kidnapped heiress Barbara Jane Mackle. While awaiting the ransom money, they buried Mackle in a fiberglass box, which fortunately contained an air pump. Mackle was rescued after 3 days, and Eisman Shire was apprehended a little over 2 months later. After serving part of her sentence, she was deported back to her native Honduras. Number 7, Leonard Peltier. Years wanted, less than 1.
And tonight we're going to focus on one bona fide political prisoner in the United States, Leonard Peltier. You ever heard of him?
One of the most controversial figures ever on the most wanted list, Native American activist Leonard Peltier was convicted of killing 2 FBI agents during a confrontation at Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. Amnesty International and numerous other groups have protested this conviction, with many maintaining that Peltier did not receive a fair trial. Supporters believe that someone other than Peltier committed the crimes.
Leonard was underground for some time, facing already convictions through the media, being put on the 10 most wanted list, even before he had went to trial, labeling him as a cop killer, as a slayer.
The FBI, however, stands solidly behind the conviction.
Although a multitude of evidence was withheld during the trial, including a ballistics test proving the deadly shell casing didn't come from his gun, Peltier was found guilty of killing both FBI agents and sentenced to 2 consecutive life terms in prison in 1977.
Number 6, Thomas James Holden. Years wanted, 1. It's a dubious distinction, But the first person to be placed on the FBI's official 10 most wanted list is Thomas James Holden. Holden was a notorious bank robber who went on a crime spree in the Midwest in the 1920s and 30s and served considerable time in jail. Shortly after his release in the 1940s, Holden killed his wife and 2 brothers. And when the FBI began its fugitives list, he was promptly put at the top, leading to his subsequent capture. Number 5. Victor Manuel Garena. Years wanted, over 30. The longest amount of time spent on the most wanted list? 30 years and counting, thanks to the elusive Victor Manuel Garena. Since 1984, Garena has been wanted in connection with the robbery of a Wells Fargo depot, in which he and his accomplices got away with $7 million. At the time, this was the biggest cash robbery in the nation's history. While many of his co-conspirators have been captured, Garena remains at large and is thought to be living in Cuba.
U.S. officials say dozens of American fugitives are believed to be living under the Cuban government's protection.
Number 4. James Whitey Bulger. Years wanted, 12. Racketeering, extortion, money laundering, weapons charges, and 11 counts of murder. These were among the 31 charges which Irish mob boss James Whitey Bulger was convicted of after his 2011 arrest.
As a bank robber, I was captured. I pled guilty to free the girlfriend that I was with, and I got a 20-year prison sentence, first offender. In prison, I was part of an escape plot. I had a guard bring me in hacksaw blades. The plot fell apart. I spent months in the hole. I went through a lot there.
He also held the distinction of being the oldest person added to the list, 69 years of age. That is, until 77-year-old William Bradford Bishop Jr. was added in April of 2012. Bulger would have also been a most wanted criminal years earlier, but because he acted as an FBI informant on other mobs, they kept him off the list for decades.
And he's going to die behind the walls of a prison. But for Jim, it doesn't matter. He's at the end of his life. He doesn't know if he'll live till the end of the trial, never mind till the end of the year.
Number 3. Theodore Ted Bundy. Years wanted, less than 1.
Sure, I get angry. Very, very angry and indignant. I don't like being locked up for something I didn't do, and I don't like my liberty taken away, and I don't like being treated like an animal, and I don't like people walking around and ogling me like I'm some sort of weirdo, because I'm not.
One of the nation's most notorious serial killers, Ted Bundy murdered at least 30 women between 1974 and 1978.
People, because he was such a handsome young man, basically overlooked any type of emptiness that was the core of him.
He managed to escape from jail twice during that period, once by losing over 30 pounds so he could fit through a small hole in his cell.
Changing his appearance like a chameleon, Bundy continued to kill until his bloody journey brought him to Florida, where in January of 1978 he went wild in this sorority house, viciously assaulting 4 women. 2 died.
Bundy brutally beat his victims. His last was a 12-year-old girl whose body was hidden in a pigsty for a year. The murderer was executed by the electric chair in 1989.
Theodore Bundy was executed at 7:16 this morning in the electric chair at Florida State Prison. He was executed for the murder of 12-year-old Kimberly Leach of Lake City, Florida.
Number 2. Osama bin Laden. Years wanted, 12.
We begin with the story of a shadowy multimillionaire who has declared a holy war against the United States. To some in the Islamic world, he is a hero. To the United States government, though, he is a terrorist.
Although most infamous for masterminding the 9/11 attacks in 2001, Osama bin Laden actually made the FBI's list earlier, in 1999. He was placed there due to his role in the 1998 bombing of the U.S. embassies in Kenya and Tanzania.
2 American embassies blown up in East Africa minutes apart. Who did it? Why? And why now?
With the blood of thousands of American citizens on his hands, bin Laden was wanted by many organizations other than the FBI. His death at the hands of a U.S. Special Forces unit in 2011 effectively removed him from the list.
Tonight, I can report to the American people and to the world that the United States has conducted an operation that killed Osama bin Laden, the leader of al-Qaeda, and a terrorist who's responsible for the murder of thousands.
Before we reveal our top pick, here are a few dishonorable mentions.
1 man, 9 wives, 62 kids. For a leader of the largest polygamous group in the country, membership had its privileges. But now 2 family members of the group led by Warren Jeffs are determined to help others make the same dramatic decision they did. Get out.
First of all, if you're going to talk about a revolutionary situation, you have to have people who are physically able to wage revolution, who are physically able to organize and physically able to do all that is done.
Number 1. James Earl Ray. Years wanted, less than 1.
Like the assassinations of John F. Kennedy and his brother Robert, the murder of Martin Luther King Jr. is a case that refuses to be closed. 9 years later, a special committee of Congress is investigating the crime. The Attorney General of the United States has publicly said he wants to talk to the man who sits in prison as the assassin.
Convicted for the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King in 1968, James Earl Ray was already a criminal and escaped convict at the time of the infamous shooting. Although Ray confessed to the crime and pled guilty, he recanted that confession 3 days later.
Did you fire the shot that killed Dr. Martin Luther King?
No, and I think now, based on investigations of those who have represented me, that we could prove it through some type of judicial proceedings.
After appearing on the FBI's Most Wanted Fugitives list that year, he found himself on the list in 1977, following a prison escape with 6 other inmates. They were returned 3 days later. He died in prison in 1998. However, debate over whether Ray acted alone, was part of a group effort, or was a victim of a conspiracy still continues to this day.
The jury returned a staggering verdict. Not only did they find Lloyd Giles liable for King's death, they also assigned partial blame to a conspiracy possibly involving the U.S. government, the Memphis police, and mobsters.
Agree with our choices? Which other of the FBI's most notorious fugitives deserves to be on this list? For more enthralling top 10s published daily, be sure to subscribe to WatchMojo.com.
Staring him dead in the eye, Emily Lyons blasted Eric Rudolph, calling him a failure and a coward who had spent his life in prison rather than risk death. She told a smug Rudolph he might as well be dead because he'll never marry a woman he loves or father his own children.